equal, right? Men and women have a role. It's very simplified. In a society like ours, a more modern society, it's very complex, right? So you don't really know who is competent. You don't really know who's qualified. You don't really know the people around you and the skills that they do, whatever they do to make money, however they earn it, whether it's legal or illegal, right? We have complexity of social class. We still have a lot of the same problems that we already discussed, right? Like clearly wealth still accumulates into the hands of a few people, right? So we discussed yesterday, two wealthiest people on the planet, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, likely. I think they're number 1 and 2. And near $250 billion net worth combined between the two of them is more than 30 to 40% of all the humans alive combined together on the planet, right? And so we still have a lot of these problems, but there's complexity within the social structures. Which brings us to industrial society. So this is one of the more recent ones. This occurred after the Industrial Revolution. So for those of you who think these notes are stupid and nothing to write, you might want to write down, when did the Industrial Revolution begin in Europe and North America? Does anyone know? When did we start industrializing? Any particular year, age range, year range?
Not 19.
Late 1700s, early 1800s. That's when the Industrial Revolution started occurring, particularly for Europe and North America. Okay. But after you have one thing with agrarian societies that I mentioned, you also have population increase. To some extent, you also start to see cities. With industrialization, that population really starts going up. Okay, but once you had enough people gathered into cities, you're able to exchange more ideas. There's more people who are allowed to innovate. There's more people in general. You're not just based on survival, right? So there's a thing called, I believe it's called subsistence farming. It basically means that you grow just enough food, you accumulate just enough food to help you survive. But once people started developing surplus, there was extra. That's when society could start advancing to some extent, right? And eventually in the last, from the late, so let's say like 1775 to about 1975, you're in industrial societies. The hallmarks of this are mass production. Right, so for example, all of you can get clothes for relatively cheap. We have plenty of food available to us, to the point where rather than, we're kind of at a tipping point, which is kind of an ironic phrase to use, where rather than having lots of people in the world starving, not enough food, we have the complete opposite problem. There are brand new health issues coming to light because people have too much to eat and they don't move enough. And we have too much access to, I don't know if I should say too much access, because that might be a little anti-human, but we have food sources that produce so much calorie surplus that people are overweight, right? And they're experiencing health problems due to that. You also have division of labor, so this is just an expansion of what we talked about before with specialization, right? It's a very similar division of labor. You have massive population increase, so in the last 200 years, the population on Earth has gone from about 1 billion to, I think we're getting close to 8 billion now.
9 billion.
We're not at 9 billion, we're nowhere near. We're like a billion off of 9 billion. Now some people, I'll just give you a little side note, some people anticipated that the population would just keep going up. But what many people aren't seeing with these more modern societies, and I just listened to a snippet of a podcast about this last night, this lady was explaining that when contraception was created, which would have been towards the end of this industrialization period, it was assumed by researchers that people would just have 2.1 kids. Okay, why is 2.1 an important number? Say that again. No, please.
Every 10 would have 3 kids.
Yeah, so every certain number of families, there's extra children, right? So 2.1 is above replacement, because we're not frogs, right? We need 2 people to have a child. So if you just have 1 kid, if your population, your birth rate is below 2.1, you're not replacing the people who are making the kids, right? You start to have an aging population, which produces problems. Okay. So this lady, she was explaining that many researchers at the time when contraception was created, they just simply thought people would just stick to having 2.1 kids, right? So roughly 2. But what she said is other research came out that says about human behavior that we're very well adapted to doing what's normal. So people will look around and they'll go, oh, like nobody I know is having children, so I shouldn't have children. It's abnormal, right? And what she was explaining is that there was a study done, there was some research that came out that said, like, I think it's for women, that if her friend or sibling has a child within the next 2 years, she has a dramatically increased likelihood of having a child, right? Because we're going to do what the people around us are doing. And that kind of comes from our roots from hunter-gatherer societies, the 2 million years of evolution of looking around and seeing, like, what is the group doing? Because that's a very good indicator of what I should be doing. So if I do something strange, maybe the group will disown me, and for our kind of reptilian brain, the bottom part of our brain, if you're disowned by your group, you know, it's akin to death, right? You're likely going to die, particularly in those hunter-gatherer societies. Now, a lot of what industrial societies allows is that you can kind of solely rely on yourself, right? So one individual can produce enough income to pay for their own housing, to be able to pay other people to produce their food, right? Because food does grow on trees, but those trees have to be managed and properly cultivated. So tying in that point about population, so some people theorize that the population would just keep going up, except what we're actually experiencing in many industrial societies and many modernized countries, so particularly Europe, North America, and some countries in Asia, is that their birth rate is actually dropping off a cliff. Many countries have a birth rate of 1 or less than 1, so they're not replenishing their population, right? And that's kind of happening rapidly all over the world as countries begin to industrialize. And it's not fully understood why that is, right? There's a couple of theories, but I won't get into that. So additionally, in the last, in that 200-year period, we're looking at technological advancements, right? So I have a slide later on, but how do you think people crossed the ocean to get to North America 500 years ago? Boats. What kind of energy system were they using?
Sails or rowers.
Wind. That's it, right? And maybe manpower, right? Like literally getting people to row their boats. You know, Vikings were very well known for having boats that did that. Whereas now, if you wanted to go to England, how would you get there?
Fly.
You'd fly, right? So massive technological advancements, which again saves people a lot of time and energy. Take a cruise as well. Take a big boat, right? That's powered by some type of fossil fuel, right? One of the major discoveries in the industrialization period is the use of external energy sources. So rather than relying on the sun or the wind, as they're trying to get us to do now again, people started relying on fossil fuels. Prior to that, they would have used whale oil as well. I don't know exactly how they use whale oil. Steam engines, but particularly fossil fuels, right? We started using coal. People would burn coal. They would use the steam that was produced, whatever mechanism they used. I don't fully understand steam engines. And they would build railroads that would then help transport people and things all the way across various countries, right? And this is rapidly changing how human life looks for many people. You also start to see mechanized factories. So there's factory work, but there's all this mechanization of factories, and nowadays we see roboticization, right? So a lot of simple labor is done by robots that just move parts, so like car manufacturing, for example. We also see a dramatic increase in efficiency, so we're a lot more efficient at producing food now. We're a lot more efficient at producing whatever things we need to help our society function and run. Okay. between the agricultural and industrial societies, wealth remains fundamentally the same. So a lot of this is based on an individual's capacity to be productive and efficient, which is rewarded even more greatly if you have skill sets like we mentioned in one of the responses yesterday. Accumulation of wealth leads to more capacity in society, which in turn could lead to more influence. Okay, so as a person gets wealthier in an industrial society, maybe they can then open up a business, open up a factory, which then allows them some degree of influence, right? Part of the issue in our society now is that some companies, businesses, they have too much influence on the government. You know, they can have a fundraising dinner where they pay a politician to speak, and then, you know, maybe some way or another, some laws changed, however that tends to go. But there are new concepts of wealth emerging as well. So money, for example, particularly like paper money, which is a very modern invention. Your labor is also a form of wealth, right? So a lot of people just do manual labor, and that might be cheaper wealth, but a very highly skilled form of labor. So for example, we discussed yesterday about Steph Curry. Steph Curry is incredibly good at putting a basketball through a hoop from 40 feet away from the net. Connor McDavid is very blessed with how he operates his feet on skates and whatnot. It's a very skilled form of labor. People are willing to pay a lot for entertainment, and these people make millions, right? Other people have different skilled labor as well that they utilize. You're starting to see different industry and products, but as before, a person's time can be exchanged for items of value and necessity. So rather than hunting for food to survive, one can gain employment in exchange for money and then spend that